She sat in the back seat of the speeding car, her hands trembling, her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if the kidnappers could hear it. The night outside was dark and cold, the highway empty except for the occasional truck that flashed past like a blur. Her breaths were shallow, her mind racing, and every second felt like it could be her last. No one knew where she was. No one had seen her taken. No one was coming. And yet, with every bit of fear shaking through her, she refused to give up. She pressed her forehead to the window, praying for a miracle. When she saw two bikers riding ahead in the distance, she made her choice. She had one last chance and she was going to take it. If you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub right now. Your support helps us spread real stories that matter. She leaned closer to the window, silently lifting her hand as much as she could, her wrists still bound by rough tape. The kidnappers sat in the front seats, arguing about money and the plan. They thought she was weak. They thought she was broken, but she was watching the bikers, praying they would notice something, anything. One of the bikers looked over his shoulder just long enough to see her face through the glass, her tear-filled eyes pleading for help. It was only a second, but sometimes a second is all fate needs. The bikers slowed, letting the car pass them. They could have ignored the moment and kept going. They could have told themselves it wasn't their problem. But something in that girl's eyes had spoken louder than any scream ever could. They exchanged a look, a silent understanding, and, without hesitation, they sped up again and pulled alongside the car. The girl tried once more, pressing her bound hands against the window, and this time the biker saw the tape. His heart dropped. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't a misunderstanding. A child was in danger. They repositioned their bikes, signaling that something was wrong, but the kidnappers saw them and accelerated. The girl felt her hope flicker, but the bikers didn't fall back. If anything, they dug deeper, leaning forward, engines roaring, determination taking over. They followed the car, weaving through the dark highway, trying to keep up as the kidnappers pushed the vehicle faster and faster. One biker grabbed his phone and dialed the police, racing while giving details. The other kept his focus ahead, watching the car, never losing sight of the terrified girl in the back. Inside the vehicle, the kidnappers panicked. The one driving cursed loudly, jerking the wheel in anger, while the man beside him twisted around to glare at the girl. She shrank back, expecting to be struck, but he only shouted threats that she refused to let sink into her heart. Because for the first time since she'd been taken, someone was fighting for her. She wasn't alone anymore, and that small spark of belief kept her breathing through the terror. The chase continued as they raced into a more populated area. Headlights flashed around them, horns blared, and cars swerved out of the way. The bikers stayed close, refusing to back off, refusing to surrender. The kidnappers tried to hide by taking sharp turns, but the bikers were fast, skilled, and unwavering. The girl watched through teary eyes, silently begging them not to give up. She closed her fists around the tape, trying to carve strength into her veins. She whispered to herself, "Just hold on." Finally, the police sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder and closer. The bikers slowed just enough to wave them toward the speeding car. The kidnappers saw the flashing lights and realized they had run out of time. They turned abruptly into an empty industrial road, hoping to lose the cops, but the road was narrow and didn't go far. The police closed in, surrounding the car. The bikers jumped off their motorcycles, running forward as officers demanded the kidnappers surrender. The girl sat frozen, tears flowing, unable to believe that this nightmare might finally be ending. The officers tore open the doors, pulling the kidnappers out and forcing them to the ground. The girl remained in the back seat, trembling, still afraid to move in case this was a trick, a cruel dream, another part of the horror. A policewoman gently opened the door and knelt beside her, touching her shoulder with the care of someone who understood pain. "You're safe now," she whispered, and only then did the girl break down, collapsing into her arms, her body shaking with days of fear she had been holding inside. Outside the car, the bikers stood watching, breaths heavy, adrenaline fading. They didn't ask to be thanked. They didn't try to be heroes. They just knew they had done what any human should do when someone is begging for help. They acted. The police officers thanked them, calling them courageous, but the bikers simply nodded. They looked at the girl being guided into an ambulance and quietly hoped that life would be kinder to her from now on. The girl's family arrived at the hospital hours later, collapsing into tears the moment they saw her. They had reported her missing, terrified that they would never see her again. The room was filled with sobbing relief, shaking hugs, and love that poured from every direction. She looked at her family and felt the warmth of their presence wash over her. She was safe. She was home. And she knew she owed her life not just to the police, but to two strangers who could have looked away, but instead chose to care. Days later, she was able to speak about what happened. Reporters and investigators listened as she described the moment she saw the bikers, how she took the risk to signal them, and how she never gave up hope. Her voice was quiet but steady, the voice of someone who had faced darkness and survived. The community praised the bikers, calling them heroes, and while they appreciated the recognition, they remained humble. They had not done it for attention or reward. They had done it because that is the meaning of being human, helping each other, especially when the world seems cruel. The girl carried the lesson with her as she healed. She refused to let fear define her. She learned that even in the darkest moment, compassion can appear like a sudden burst of headlights on an empty road. She learned that sometimes strangers are the angels life sends when we cannot save ourselves. And she promised that when she grew older, she would not forget what it felt like to be saved by kindness, and she would offer that same kindness to others. Because sometimes humanity wins. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful stories that remind the world that kindness still exists. Before you leave, please comment. What would you have done if you were one of those bikers?